And an official welcome to everyone this morning. This is our virtual Iowa Quiltscape for Tuesday, February 9th. And our guest is Nancy Roth. And Nancy is joining us from Kalona, Iowa, which is about 2.5 hours away, Nancy, I
Yeah,
think.
probably 2.5.
Yeah, straight over on Interstate 80. Nancy's here today to talk to us about the Kalona Historical Village, which is dubbed the Quilt Capital of Iowa. And you'll have to tell us how we arrived at that delineation at some point, Nancy. But first, I'm just going to let Nancy introduce herself and tell us a little bit about what she does and what Kalona is. So take it away, Nancy.
Thank you, Megan, for letting me be a part of this wonderful group today. I think I'm a little intimidated now seeing all of these quilters from all over the United States attending, and I'm just located here in Little Kalona, Iowa. But I am the managing director here at the Kalona Historical Village and Quilt and Textile Museum. I have been here for 15 years. I am a native to Kalona, born and raised, and I am a part of what was a 6th-generation family-owned business here in town. And we had a fire in the fall of 2004 that basically destroyed our business. And in the spring of 2006 is when I joined the Historical Village family. As you would say, I started out here part-time, and I actually worked from home because I had 3 small children, and I was considered the tour director. So I'm still that, but I was in charge of all of the incoming bus groups and tour groups. And then I was also in charge of any events that happened here at the fall or at the Historical Village, which mainly was our fall festival. After all of my girls got into school, I needed something full-time. So I proposed a job to the board of directors here to hire me on full-time, and had a list of different things that I felt that I was capable of doing here. And so I am presently the full-time managing director. I wear very many hats here. I'm going to say I run the show, but there are people behind the scenes that also help. Most of them are volunteers, but I'm the only full-time person in the existence of the Historical Village in 50 years. So I take that as a great pleasure to be able to keep history alive in this community, and hopefully it will show all of you into our quilt world here that has grown a lot in the 20 years of its existence here.
Sure.
A little bit about Kalona. We are located 15 miles south of Iowa City, which is the University of Iowa here. And we are considered one of the largest Amish settlements west of the Mississippi. So that is a big tourism draw to our community. The town of Kalona was established in 1879 as starting out as a railroad town. We actually got acceptance for the railroad to go through our town, and that's how we started up. We had about 8 surrounding pioneer communities that basically deteriorated with Kalona starting up. And the historical village actually got started in 1979 with the relocation of our original train depot. 2 of our ladies groups here in town wanted to save the depot from being torn down. And so it was moved onto a property that was donated by a local gentleman and his wife. And so the depot started us, and we now house 12 historical buildings, and we have 3 museums on our grounds. One of the museums is the Kalona Mennonite Historical Society, so they are history of the Amish and Mennonites. We just erected a new museum, which took place of our original visitor center. We erected that 2 years ago, so we are slowly working on exhibits out there that are going to focus more on history of Kelowna and our businesses. And then the main visitor center that I'm sitting in right now that I will be showing you different aspects of, we opened up in the year 2000. Solely, this building was built because we had 32 private collection quilts that were going to be donated and they needed a home. So instead of adding on to our original visitor center, this building was fundraised and built. And in 2007, we added another gallery. And so I don't know, Megan, how far in detail you want me to go into all of that history right now, or if you want me to tell a little bit more about the town.
Let's go into quilts a little bit more later. Nancy's gonna take us on an actual tour. She's gonna pop over to her phone a little bit later and take us on a tour. But let's just kind of stick with Kelowna a little bit more right now. So you mentioned that the town itself started as a railroad town in the late 1800s. Did you say 1879? Did I catch that?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so the Kalona Historical Village is it centered right in the middle of Kelowna? I don't, geographically, I'm not sure how it's placed.
Yeah, I think we're pretty centrally located. We've got a main highway that goes east and west through our town, Highway 22, and we are located right along that highway. We actually cover about 2 square blocks. Okay. Over the years, we've had different properties that have been purchased and donated, and we actually have a house that was purchased and is a part of it. So good couple blocks covers everything that we have.
Great. And the whole historical village is geared toward telling the history of Kelowna and kind of the pioneer settlements in this area of the country, right?
Yes, all of the buildings outside are original buildings from within the area. Some were moved in from the countryside. We have a historical church. The depot was located actually just in the downtown area. We have a one-room schoolhouse. We have a post office that came from one of our pioneer communities. So yeah, they're all original buildings. They were all restored. They all have different artifacts and tell different stories within. So we do focus on the history of Kelowna. I know a lot of people think that since we're an Amish community, that this is an Amish village. Amish villages don't exist. We do tell a lot of stories about the Amish. The one-room schoolhouse would be similar to what the Amish use today out in our countryside, because they do attend one-room schoolhouses. So what a lot of people don't understand is a lot of the history, it all ties the Amish right in. A lot of people think that the Amish were the first settlers here just because of the way they live today. In the Kelowna area, the Meskwaki Indians were the first settlers here, and then a lot of the pioneer people. But when the Amish did start migrating here, they blended in with everybody, because everybody was horse and buggy people. Nobody had electricity. Everybody wore bonnets and long skirts. So in that time frame, the Amish didn't stick out quite as much as they do now. But as everybody kind of kept moving forward, the Amish in our community stood still. And so they are still horse and buggy people. They do still live without electricity. So it's definitely an interesting way of life. A lot of people are fascinated by it. To me, it's not unusual because I've lived here my whole life. I actually grew up with an Amish babysitter. So grew up going out to their farms and going to their country stores. So it's not anything different for me, which is what makes it easy for me to be a tourism director and be able to tell people a lot about their past.
That's an interesting distinction, because I have to tell you that I was kind of that mindset that I assumed that there was a stronger connection between the Amish and the Kelowna that there was that the Amish had something to do with the settling of the community. So
Oh,
that's there's a lot of similarities I'm noticing, Nancy, between your position and mine, in the way that we operate our respective organizations. But the other similarity that we both face is kind of busting those myths. Sometimes we have a lot of visitors who come into the museum with certain preconceived ideas about what quilting is or why quilts were made or how. And so part of the job of us as museums is to kind of bust those misconceptions. And of course, that's one of the trickier things to do, is help people see that the beliefs that they hold are not necessarily true, that sometimes they're folklore. Okay, so as part of the historical village, you've got the Welcome Center, which is where you are right now. There are two quilt galleries in Historical Village. Are they both there in the Welcome Center?
yes.
Okay, so tell us about those two quilt galleries.
So the main gallery we call our English quilt gallery, because of course our second gallery is our Amish quilt gallery. We actually, as our quilts grew over the years, we actually started out with the 32. And I don't know how many quilters out there know this lady, but I am going to mention her name because she is a significant part of the historical village and a part of who I am. Marilyn Wooden. She was one of the original founders of the whole entire village. And she is the one that got us started on our quilt collection here. So she donated 32 of her private collection quilts. And then she kind of was the curator for many, many years on making our quilt collection grow. We are a nonprofit ran by a board of directors, so we don't typically have funds to go out and buy things. So all of the quilts in our collection have been donated. We have several very generous benefactors that have donated a significant amount of our quilts. But others just come in a few here and there, depending on, I guess a lot of people have heard about us, so then they do approach us with different quilts. So we have over 800 quilts here today. And within those quilts, we do have a really nice collection of coverlets. A coverlet is not a quilt, so I usually do try to separate out that number. We have about 45 coverlets that start with dating of about 1832. So, yeah, we have the two quilt galleries. We actually ended up building an addition onto our visitor center in 2007 because we found out we were not hanging an Amish collection up as often as we should because as the quilts started rolling in, we had all sorts of different displays to hang. And so we felt that the Amish were a very, very important part of our history. And a lot of people are interested in learning about them. And so this second gallery is now just straight Amish quilts. We do try to change it out 2 times a year. The English gallery, we try to change out about 3 times a year, depending on the year, which last year was a throwaway year. So not many visitors, I didn't bust to change it out. But yeah, 3 times a year is usually what we do, try to change the English gallery out.
Okay. And in addition to the 2 quilt galleries, this is a little bit off of the quilt path, but kind of textile still. You have the loom house, right?
Yes.
Okay, tell us about the loom house.
So the loom house, which originally was just a house that was on this location, when the whole village started, it kind of transformed into many different buildings. Started out as a house, was turned into restrooms, was turned into a storage room, and then a local gal who is big into weaving helped Marilyn turn it into a loom house. So a lot of families had loom houses on their farms, and it would be basically where they would go out and spin and weave. Now, I did see somebody ask what the difference between a coverlet and a quilt is. A coverlet would have been woven on a loom. And so most of the coverlets that we have here, I'm going to do just a little short story on what coverlets were all about. A lot of the coverlets that we have, there were traveling salesmen, and they were men typically in those days, and they hauled around a big loom, and they would set up in communities, and they would go out and they would sell coverlets to people. The coverlets would have different patterns, but the significance of them is they would have your family name on them, they would have the town, and they would have dates. And so once the salesman was done in a particular town, they would move on. Coverlets kind of had a short period of lifetime. They kind of ended, I'm going to say the late 1800s, that there just wasn't a demand for them anymore. So that kind of dwindled. One thing that's neat about our loom house is we have an original loom from the Kalona area in our Mennonite Museum. And we actually have coverlets that were made directly on that loom. So that's kind of neat. We are fortunate, 2 years ago, we had a lady that retired from her job, and she had always helped during our festival with our spinning wheels and our looms, demonstrating. Well, when she retired, she came in and she volunteered her time. She cleaned up our loom house. She has every single wheel we have on site, which is, I'm going to say, at least 12, 13 wheels. They all full function. She comes in regularly and spins on them. And then what she spins, she's got 2 looms out in the loom house that she'll jump onto, and she's made coverlets, she's made runners, rugs, she makes scarves. So the loom house is full functioning, which is really awesome, because when we do have groups that come in, whether it's school groups or bus groups, she's always willing to come in and demonstrate. I see it a little bit as a lost art, even though in her world, the fiber world, there's still a lot of people out there that do spin and weave. But for the historical village, I think it just captures a piece of time that people really enjoy watching, including children.
Sure. I think it's always fascinating to see somebody spin. And I don't know that I've ever seen anybody loom weave in person on a loom. Lynn is asking if you have a 4-harness loom. I have no idea what that means.
Oh, Lynn, hi, Judy. Lynn, I'm going to say, yeah, at least one of those looms is a 4-harness loom. And if we didn't have 3 foot of snow out on the grounds, I would take you out there, but I don't know for sure on that. And if I would have been thinking fast enough, like I told Megan, I would have had Grace, who is our loom house curator, be here today to spin, because she's so wonderful and she makes it look so easy. But I wasn't thinking fast enough on that one.
That's all right. Leave them wanting more, right? That's what they always say.
Yes.
All right, so let's take just a—
Michelle asked a question. Michelle, I'm gonna, when I'm doing a little walk around, all of our wheels are in this building. We moved them in for the winter because our loom house is not heated. And since so much time and effort has been put into restoring all of them, they needed to be in a controlled environment. So I will kind of give you a little shot at each wheel. And yeah, she's got a walking wheel. And like I said, I wish she were here to demonstrate them, because there's some really unique ones in there.
Cool. Let's just take a quick second, each of us, Nancy, and talk about what's behind us. So behind me is a quilt by Roderick, it's loaned by Roderick Kirikoff for our current exhibit, which is called String Theory, String Pieced Quilts from Past to Present. And this exhibit we opened just after the first of the year. It'll be up through March 21st. And this has been a really wonderfully popular exhibit for us. So this one, to turn around, circa 1950 to 1975, hand-pieced and hand-quilted. I'll let somebody in from the waiting room. The backing is 2 pieces of printed cottons. There's binding on 3 sides, which is brought back to front. But the maker is unknown, and it's loaned to us again from Roderick Kirikoff. So that is what is behind me. I can't remember who asked about that. Okay, now Nancy, tell us what's behind you.
Okay, so one thing that I thoroughly enjoy about my job is going from retail in this community to going to a museum. I have a lot of personal family history here. And so that's what makes me excited every day to show everybody the history here. And I don't know if most of you recognize what's behind me, but these are spool cabinets. So they date about 1885 to 1915. And those that owned general stores, if they ordered thread through the thread companies, they would get a free cabinet like one of these. This one that I'm pointing at right here, it's extremely large. It's got a fancy clock on it. You would have found a larger one like that in a larger city department store. And I'm going to kind of move my computer a little bit because they're all surrounding behind me. This collection is a little bit true to my heart because it is my father's collection. So Megan is from Winterset, as is Judy that's on today, which is exciting. And the gentleman that was introduced to my father about 25 years ago is from Winterset. And he was an avid spool cabinet collector and restorer. And Judy introduced my father to him. And it became love at first sight. After that, my father was a fanatic at trying to find spool cabinets to restore and bring back to life. We have probably about 45 here in an exhibit. Most of them he has donated permanently to the museum, which is a wonderful asset to the quilt world. And total, he has about 175 of them in his collection. If you are a spool cabinet fanatic or want to know more about it, let me know when you come to Kalona, because my father is all about showing and talking about his collection. And he is also in the process of creating a book about everything in his collection, including little thread boxes and other sewing notions that are part of his collection. So that is what is behind me.
And you mentioned Judy is the proprietor of the Ben Franklin store, which is right next door to us. I actually sometimes hear them tapping on the wall when they're hanging new signs on their west wall. But your family your store was a Ben Franklin store as well, right, Nancy?
Yep, we were a Ben Franklin store until Ben Franklin actually filed bankruptcy. Now, Dave and Judy still hold the Ben Franklin franchise name. Our business has always had our family name on it, but we still always considered ourselves a Ben Franklin. So a long time old friends with Dave and Judy.
Cool. So before you take us walking, nope, I take that back. Let's go ahead and go walking a little bit, Nancy, because we're about 25 minutes in, so it's a good time to shake things up a little bit. I'm going to stall for just a little bit because Nancy needs a few minutes to get her phone logged on. So while I'm stalling, let me tell you a little bit more about Winterset. I already mentioned that we have a fantastic Ben Franklin store next door. And the coolest part about the Ben Franklin store is that it's got this great, huge fabric section. And Judy does a fantastic job of stocking that. Not only that, but she's wonderfully helpful and can always get you headed in the right direction. She has done so many times for me. Just down the street, about 6 storefronts down the opposite direction, we have another wonderful quilt shop called Pieceworks. And Joyce Franklin and Tony Jacobson run and manage that store. And they have a wonderful selection as well. Different. Joyce and Tony tend to go more for the colorful and the wild prints and things. And you might find a few more traditional prints at Ben Franklin, although they both have wonderful selections. And then the Iowa Quilt Museum is plopped right in the middle of those. So as a quilter, this is just a wonderful place to visit. If you're a fiber artist of other sorts, we have a fantastic yarn shop as well, Heartland Fiber, which is just across the block. And that's just the tip of the iceberg for awesome shopping opportunities in Winterset. So if you are not in Iowa, plan to make a trip here, and you can hit Kalona and Winterset all at the same time. If you are in Iowa, plan a couple of day trips is our suggestion to you. So, all right, we've got Nancy on her phone now, and she has taken us to, where are we, Nancy? Oops, you're muted.
Okay, we are in the Amish quilt gallery.
All right.
And I'm going to turn, you don't need to look at me this close. I'm going to turn around. So I'm just going to introduce you a little bit to the quilts that we have showing. Now, one thing that was positive for our museum during COVID, we shut down for close to 2 months. And so it gave us time to regroup our displays. In the gallery, we used to just have a bunch of different treadle sewing machines, and we did have spool cabinets tied into this gallery, but we decided a lot of people that come and visit want to know more about the Amish. So we took very simple artifacts that were in storage rooms and closets and created little exhibits on the floor that tell a little bit about more of the simplicity of the Amish lifestyle. So as I'm kind of showing you the different quilts on the walls, if you notice just what's along the floor, because for those of you that don't know a lot about the Amish, they're very simple people. So we changed this gallery to say Amish way of life rooted in tradition. Because a lot of traditions carry through in the Amish life. So I'm just going to kind of pan the room, and then Megan will have to let me know if anybody has questions because I can't see the chat. Within our quilt collection, about 250 of our quilts are Amish, and 125 of those are crib quilts. So we have a significant collection of crib quilts. Now, for those of you that still have grandma's treadle sewing machine, cherish them. We have quite a few in our collection. The Amish will still use treadle sewing machines today, of course, because they don't have electricity. These are two different string star patterns that I think are wonderful. All this equipment on the ground is showing the simple farm equipment that they'll use in their gardens. Here's a bunch of our different crib quilts that we have, just a handful.
Now, Nancy, are there very particular stylistic attributes when it comes to Amish quilts?
I see the Amish quilts, a lot of them. So like this one I'm looking at right now, that's not a typical pattern. I have a gal that actually is writing a fiction book about Amish. And she asked me a question about their quilting, like if they followed patterns, you know, how they did that. From what I understand, a lot of people think to the Amish just automatically knew how to quilt. And from what I've learned, when they migrated to the United States, they learned a lot of their quilting from us. And I think like this one seems to be a favorite of everybody's. And I think probably why is because of that little bit of fuchsia that's in there. I mean, a lot of my quilts in this collection that I hung are representing different shades of brown. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's hard to take that color like this one here is beautiful. The quilt works beautiful. But I think a lot of them created a lot of their own designs. Not saying that they don't follow patterns. Churn dash is a pretty popular pattern. So I'm going to spin over here again. I've got quite a few churn dash quilts. Amish wise, the simple diamond in a square has always been a really popular pattern. So I think that it goes both ways. I think they created a lot of their own. I think that they followed, traditional patterns that were maybe passed down from generation to generation. I'm not an expert. What you ladies do need to understand is I'm not a quilter. I'm not educated in museum world. I have been self-taught and self-learned from different people here. Marilyn Wooden is probably the person I can give most of that credit to, because I started helping her create the exhibits, help her organize. And we do also have um, uh, a quilt study group if you're close by here. We call it the Iowa Illinois Quilt Study Group, even though we have people now that are coming from Minnesota, Nebraska. We meet twice a year. We meet first weekend in April and first weekend in August. This year, because of COVID, we are skipping the April session, but we'll be meeting in August. And these are ladies that quilt, and some do machine quilting, but these ladies that come have a passion for studying quilts. So people bring in historic quilts, they bring in new quilts that they've made, they bring in quilts that they've found at auctions, and they need help identifying. I have learned so much from these ladies from helping. I basically help hang the quilts for the show and tells, and depending on the lectures. So I've just learned over the last 15 years that I've been here, I've learned from people. And so I have a great passion for the historical aspect of what quilts are all about. And it takes you into the unknown. So I appreciate all of you ladies and what you do with quilts. I wish or hope someday that I'll be able to sit down and make my own. Megan, do you want me to move on to the next room?
Not yet. I got one quick question for you. So
Okay.
Are all of the Amish quilts in your collection, are they historical quilts, or do you have some Amish quilt makers still in your community?
There are still Amish quilt makers in our community, but what we have here at the museum, I think maybe I only have 2 wall hangings that are going to be considered newer. And I'm going to say they're going to probably be like 1980s, 1990s. The rest of our Amish quilts date about 1920s to 1940s. So yeah, majority are all historical.
And you mentioned that this particular exhibit kind of touches mostly on the brown and the neutral colors. Are most of the quilts in the collection that way, the Amish ones? Or is that just kind of a particular vocal or visual choice that you made this time?
Yeah, it's just kind of a visual choice. Sometimes the Amish quilts, it's not like with the English gallery, I can have a theme. It's a lot harder to do that in the Amish room. So yeah, when I was going through to pick out what I wanted, I started focusing on just the ones that had brown colors in and how they highlighted it. I know we've done a display that pulled out the blues. And then just, this is kind of a little bit off course, but I want to give them a little credit. After Marilyn retired as curator, she always used to coordinate all the exhibits. We used to have a couple of local gals that would come help her. Well, they had jobs, they had their own businesses, and I hated pulling them away. So I started pulling in my own children to help with these exhibits here. My oldest daughter now is 21 and my youngest one is 15. And my oldest daughter probably helped me since she was 14 do these exhibits. So as they get older, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do these exhibits on my own. I will definitely have to reach out for volunteers. But my girls know probably just as much about all these quilts that we have in our collection, and have ones that they hate and ones that they love. But they always would compete. One would pick out what was going to hang in the Amish gallery, and the other one would pick out what was going to hang in the English gallery, and have a competition as to who liked which gallery better. So that's a little fun fact about what behind the scenes happens.
Well, I've found it, I'm always able to get people to come help me hang quilts if I need volunteers. Now, getting people to come help me clean the upstairs after we finish our renovation, that'll be a little bit harder, I imagine, but people like to hang quilts. All right, so take us on into the English gallery now, if you would.
Okay, I'm gonna.
You got to look up while you're walking.
Well, yeah. I'll flip it because we do have a couple crib quilts that hang above our guest desk here.
Oh, sure. Oh, cool.
I got to show everything possible to everybody that we have hanging. So these are some more Amish cribs. And then we do change these out. And they're sorry for if the lighting's not very good, but it is so bright and sunny out today, and it's reflecting off the snow. And so it makes it a little harder to see. I'm not going to complain about the sun though. We could take the sun. Okay. So in our English gallery, we have red and greens and red and whites, and they date, I haven't had enough people in this season to actually remember. The earliest one, I'm just going to start with the earliest one we have in here, and it's this lovely coxcomb, and it dates 1855, and it is a signed quilt. One thing that I've learned with hanging these quilts is I wish that ladies thought to document their quilts like they document them today, because not everything is easy to identify. So that's where I reach out to all of the historical quilt ladies to help identify. Now, as I'm going through here, I am going to also show the spinning wheels. Now, this one is unbelievable, and I wish I could have had Grace here today. She was working on this unique thing. She sits in a chair to use this one. So any of you that want to come to visit Kalona, please let me know if you're interested in the wheels, because I will try to make a date where she's here to spin. This little one she calls Prince George. She has kind of names for everybody. That one's a really pretty pattern, snowball pattern. One thing with Grace too is she does not use just plain old wool. She does have a preference on the wool she used, but she loves bringing in color. I did see a post asking if most of the quilts are from Iowa. No, they're from all over, and a lot of them are unknown where they came from. Now, this particular quilt, you cannot see from this distance. I'm going to see if I can get up close enough to it. This is a signature quilt. So most of the writing is really faded, but there are signatures in every triangle, including these little ones.
Oh my gosh. That is so tiny.
So, and to me, it almost, I refer to this quilt maybe more as a church quilt, because we have a church quilt in our collection, and it's got over 1,000 names on it. So this one, because it looks like the handwriting is fairly similar. And actually, as I was showing this to a couple one day, I came upon this block here, and it actually has a date on it. So otherwise, I did not have a date for this quilt until this is what when I get distracted talking to people that I noticed that in the corner. And so it's 1833 on that one. Now like I said, I'm not a quilt expert, but now I've learned that this cheddar yellow that shows up in several of these quilts, they said the cheddar yellow stemmed from the Pennsylvania area. Kind of the Mennonite Old Order Amish. So I don't know if our Pennsylvania ladies, can you confirm that information? I do like to try to at least tell factual information. So most of these ones that have significant cheddar in them, they said would have come from Pennsylvania.
Wow, those are some really beautiful 2-color quilts, Nancy.
That one's, let me see. Yeah, this one's 1870 Pennsylvania is what I have that one. And that's just a little wall hanging.
Mm-hmm. It's fun to see the quilts on the bed. One of the things that I've always been struck by is how different quilts can look when you hang them up on a wall. And some of them, when I take them out of the box, I think that they're not so much special until I get them hanging on a wall, and then they just really jump at me in a different way. So that's really fun about hanging quilts, but it's also neat to see them on the bed the way they were envisioned and intended. Because the textiles that we hang, the historical textiles that we hang, typically, they were never intended to be displayed on walls. They were intended to be put on beds or draped over sofas or that kind of thing.
So too, the one that I have on the bed here, the pattern name is Trumpet, and I purposely put it on the bed because it's got staining on it, which when I get closer, but people don't recognize it laying on the bed, where if I had it up on the wall, then they could see all the stainage.
Right.
One thing with the collections that we do have, or the quilts we have in this particular collection, most of them are in pristine condition. I have very, very few that are in bad shape. So of all of the quilts that we have, some of our board members have asked, well, can we just get rid of quilts? It's like, well, there's a handful that probably are in really rough condition, but we could use those for educational purposes. And a few that maybe, don't tie in with anything that we could move on. But gosh, it'd be really hard to really pick what you would want to get rid of. Is it okay if I take them into the storage room?
Yes, before you do that though, we'd like to see the red and green center diamond that's directly behind you right now.
Okay. That one?
Nope. Turn to your left, I think.
That one?
Nope. Red and green.
Oh.
Yep.
This one.
Down. Yes. So, let's see. Barb has asked to look at that one. That one, Barb's probably thinking, looks almost identical to a quilt that we displayed in our last collection of the International Quilt Museum. International Quilt Museum. It's just remarkably similar, down to the sawtooth and everything. And we placed that one as a Pennsylvania quilt. I think maybe it was Barb who helped us identify the fact that it was probably a Pennsylvania quilt.
The only information I have on this one is it's about 1920s. I don't have a maker or anything. So if that's great to know if people think this is Pennsylvania. It's a wonderful piece.
Yeah, it is. Barb is saying it looks like a Pennsylvania German quilt.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I say too, so even though this is not a predominantly Amish gallery, that's where like the cheddar yellows can tie in with that Amish Mennonite.
Sure. Okay, go ahead and take us into the storage area because we're interested in seeing that. And I will respond to this question that says, has the Iowa Quilt Museum had an Amish quilt display? And we have not. That is something that is on our list of potential future exhibits. That list is getting longer every year because there's lots and lots of quilts out there that we'd love to display, but with only 4 exhibits a year, we only get to display so many at a time. Ooh, this is so interesting.
So after Marilyn retired, I jumped in to trying to figure out how to organize all of these quilts that we had, because with her in the picture, it was extremely hard to do that. I attended an Iowa museum conference that was held at the University of Iowa. And I was in a session where they were kind of trying to show us how to preserve your artifacts, which of course I was just looking at a way to preserve my quilts. And I actually spoke with one of the ladies after the session. And I said, I have quilts and textiles, and I need help. This back room at one point in time, we had all of our clothing collection here. We had books, we had furniture, we had quilts everywhere. Kind of looked like a bomb. A quilt bomb had blown up back here. And it drove me crazy because I may not be the quilt expert, but I am an organizer. So the gal took me into a little storage room at the University of Iowa campus. And she actually is the in charge of the Natural History Museum at the University of Iowa, it turns out. She hands me this piece of paper, and basically it's this hanging concept that we have. And I'll turn it back around again. So it took me 2 years. I applied for the grant twice, but this ended up being a $25,000 project. We cleared every single item out of this back room when we finally got the grant. We painted the walls. We had a contractor that hung all the initial brackets. But the whole concept of this is all of your hardware, all of your pulls and your hooks and your screws can be bought at Menards. And then all of my other stuff, acid-free tubes, unbleached muslin that covers the quilts. And then there's acid-free tissue that rolls the whole length and width of the quilts. And then I do attach a picture to the outside of each one. I had 2 people that helped me do this, one that was running the computer and one that was physically helping me handle everything. And it took us 4 months to do everything. To me, this is a way, and I had controversy from a lot of people on, you can't roll quilts, you got to fold them. People got to understand, you got to know what you have for manpower. And I'm the manpower, and I can't handle 800 quilts on my own. I visited the Grout Museum and looked at their display. I visited the Lincoln Museum. And actually, when I did that, I kind of went last minute, and the wonderful docent that was on duty that day, it was a Saturday afternoon. I had all of my Kalona stuff in my hands, and I had my cards, and they told me at the front door that the storage rooms are closed because sometimes they offer tours. Well, this wonderful docent, after I told him my story, took me into the storeroom. Now, of course, they fold all of their quilts, and I think they're probably up to about, 6,000 quilts now. And I knew that I couldn't do that. And so I did make the move to go with this rolling concept on majority of everything. It does take 2 people. So that's where my kids come in. It does take 2 people to roll. I do have a lot of items still in boxes though. We have about 50 crazy quilts. So all of the crazy quilts go into boxes, even though some maybe could be rolled. I have a lot of our Amish crib quilts in boxes. And then I have a handful of other wall hangings and toppers. So they do go in boxes. The coverlets, which I've had different people tell me I'm doing the wrong thing on that too. They came in trunks as a donation, so they stay in trunks. They don't get creases or anything like that. But my claim to fame on this whole rolling concept is, it was a lot of my red and white quilts had really major seams that went down the middle, and most of them are mid 1800s. And so after we got done rolling them, I didn't hang any of the red and whites for 2 years. And now I can dig those out and you don't see any seams. We don't put a lot of pressure when we roll these. We just got to get that initial piece on and then we kind of free roll it. So to me, there's no pressure on them. I know a lot of people thought that the stitching would stretch, but I don't think that it's any worse than sometimes when you fold and then you don't fold often enough. I think you're going to damage the stitches worse that way. But I know like every 2-3 months there's a new concept that comes out on how you store, but this is what works for us here. This is something that if tomorrow I was dead, somebody could come in and understand what I do. I have everything on the computer. It's just in a spreadsheet form right now. I do also have a book that I call my quilt Bible that has they're in categories. So everything in here is in a category. And you can go through this book and there's a picture of everything. So when I want to hang and display, I just go to that category and figure out what I want to hang. So this is what works for me the best.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And you have to know what your organization and what yourself can withstand, and find something that works for you. And, the chat window is, there's lots of people who are, pointing out other examples of organizations that roll their quilts. So no criticism on our end. So I know you got a few pieces laid out from your next exhibit, which is going to be feed sacks and flour sacks. Give us a little sneak peek of that while you're in the storage room.
I thought that since they were so this collection's being brought in by what I call our local county historian. His name is Mike Zoss. A lot of people may know him. He's pretty famous for different things. He is, if you look up the Britain films, he is famously known for finding one of the first, films that are like on the reel. So he's very famous for that. But like I said, he is our county historian. He has a wealth of collections. And I'm going to turn this around. I'm kind of very excited to have this come in. I think it's kind of a once in a lifetime collection to come in. I just laid out a couple of the examples that he showed me. If you can see these tiny, tiny pieces. Now, this is just a topper. So when I asked him if we could display some of these, he asked me how many I'd need. And I said, oh, usually 20, 25. He goes, well, I have 60 apple boxes and most of them are toppers. So this one's just a topper. And I was like, oh my. Now he did bring this piece in the other day. I don't know if you can see it very well. He would like to create a pattern. It's old and I've been trying to figure out what is inside of it. I think it's made out of a box. I mean, it feels like cardboard, like he said, unless you dissect it. So that's just a little neat. He's just, like I said, he's got boxes that he started bringing in, but he's got tons of the old bags that we're going to display. And then this piece here. So this is a reversible quilt. So I've kind of flipped it over. And if I'm going to get up close, but each piece, he said, comes from the back. So like, let me find my finger. Here's my finger. So this trim is coming off the piece that's on the other side. And then each one of these little guys is hand stuffed. And you can see how little the pieces are. They're not very big.
My mind baffles at this.
Exactly. And like I said, it's double-sided. So I think when we actually hang this one, we'll hang it like I have it now, so they can see that it's double-sided. And then I just laid out a few that were on top. I mean, I have no concept as to what I'm actually. He asked me if he could start bringing stuff in. He's brought in 2 loads. He actually has furniture that he wants to bring in. I love this piece. I just think it's cute. So that's all that I have out. But this particular show, I think I'm planning on having up majority of the season. It's going to be ready to go by April 1st, and I'd like to run it at least into October, because we have our big fall festival at the end of September. I just think it's something that everybody's going to want to see. And actually I thought I was going to do the display, but I think that he's going to come in and he's going to take over, and I'm going to be his assistant for once, because he's hung different shows himself and it's his stuff, and he's going to know what's going to work. I told him I could take out anything in the gallery that he didn't want, that didn't tie in. We'll change out the clothing on the mannequins that we have to 1930s, 40s. So basically house dresses or aprons. So I'm really excited about this. I think that it's going to be just a phenomenal show. And so that's the excitement for the year, I think, is, we're probably not going to get back to a total normal year, but I think this show will just help make it more exciting.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so that's a good segue to kind of talk about how people can come visit. Do you want to swing back over to your computer, or are you good where you are?
Yeah, why don't you give me just a second and I'll flip back over to that.
So I just want to kind of make a point of saying, the idea behind these presentations, the Iowa Quiltscape, is not necessarily that we're telling you anything historically new. It's not about the history of Amish quilts or the history of this or that, but we want to draw your focus to what happens or what's available in Iowa that's quilt related, in addition to the Iowa Quilt Museum, of course. So Kalona is really one of the quilting treasures in our state, as Nancy has so adequately shown us today. So if you are able to do plan to make a trip to Kalona, I have to ashamedly say I've actually never been to Kalona myself. I have young children at home and we just don't get out all that much. But it is definitely on my bucket list to go over to Kalona sometime soon. And I'm a big fan of the feed sack fabrics. So perhaps I will get there this summer where I can see that exhibit. All right, we've got Nancy back on her computer now. So let me add that spotlight. So people want to come visit Kalona. Tell us the details about how that works.
I'll type in our website at the bottom. And I know a lot of people ask if we show our quilts on our website. We really don't. But like I've said before, if I know you're coming, I thoroughly, this just excites me to show people around, show people the storeroom. I would be more than honored to give you a private tour. I'm proud of what we have in this community. We're a very small community. I think our museum has done nothing but grow over the years. I think that Maryland Wooden just deserves a lot of credit for what we are all about, especially in our quilt world. But definitely go to the website. It'll give you a sneak peek into what different buildings we have here. We're updating the website for some of our events. It'll tell you about the Fall Festival. Fall Festival is an excellent time to come if you want to see not only the buildings, but the quilts. It's always the last Friday and Saturday in September. And with your admission into the festival, which is held out on our grounds, you get full admission into all of the buildings. Come in and see the quilt rooms, plus you get in on all the music and food and activities that go on. We've got a wonderful downtown. So just a little bit more about Kalona. Phenomenal downtown with a lot of shops. If you're fabric ladies, we have 2 wonderful quilt shops in the downtown area, Willow Creek Collectibles, Stitch and Sew Cottage, and a lot of neat antique shops, some great food places. And then a lot of people do come for our countryside. That is where all of our Amish businesses are located. We do have several non-Amish businesses. We have a great woodworking shop. We have a creamery that people like to go out into the countryside. I am also more than happy to send out packets with our current visitors guide. If you want to come spend a day in Kalona, you can get onto the website and get my email and email me, or email me any questions after this. If you had certain questions on anything that you see here, definitely if you want a private school cabinet tour, you'll have to let me know for sure ahead. But like I said, even though I was a retail girl, being a part of this museum is one of those jobs, and Megan probably is just like me, that you can honestly say that you love going to work every day. I love being able to interact with the people, find out where they're from, and just love being a part of this community. Oh, so Michelle asked if Grace will demonstrate at fall. Yeah, definitely fall festival. She doesn't have consistent days of the week that she's here. But if you know that you want to make a trip here, you can just get a hold of me and I can make sure she's here. We do have a city campground, and there is private campgrounds. If you want to pull your camper and spend a weekend, we do have a mom and pop hotel, and we have several bed and breakfasts. And then if any of you are gamblers, we are 8 miles from the Riverside Casino and Golf Resort. So bring your husbands along, let them go golf and gamble, and you guys can come to Kalona and spend all their money.
And is there still a brewery? I'm looking at your Kalona.
Yes. So
I can basically get anywhere if I promise to stop at the brewery.
Yes, the brewery, I think the brewery's going on 5-6 years that they've been here. If you are a beer drinker, they have won numerous awards on their different brews, but their food is their food is phenomenal also. They do a lot of organic with their foods. So they make a lot of their own sauces. They have range-free chicken, grass-fed beef. They do brick oven pizzas. So that is a phenomenal place to eat. So yeah, several great places to eat. If you come Fall Festival weekend though, there's a lot of awesome local foods here on the grounds. And Megan, for you, we have kids activities. So we do try to focus on family for Fall Festival. Car shows, yeah. I know midsummer we do like a downtown street car show. There is a car museum up in Iowa City that is wonderful, that he would thoroughly enjoy. Tractor museums, I'm going to suggest more towards the Quad Cities when you're involving the John Deere's Quad Cities in Waterloo for more of your tractor museums. We do try to have some tractors on display for Fall Festival, but we don't have that many. So.
Well, gosh, it sounds like there's a lot of reasons that we would all enjoy coming to Kalona, and a little something for everyone, which is like the perfect kind of Iowa attraction. So Nancy, thanks so much for sharing about Kalona and letting us know about this fantastic place, which is part of the Iowa Quiltscape, is kind of the term that I've coined. And so just in my closing, I'm going to put the Iowa Quilt Museum's website here, which is really easy, iowaquiltmuseum.org. We don't have anything specific that we talked about in relationship to our museum today, but if you want to learn a little bit more about the Iowa Quilt Museum, jump on there. You can find a place to make a little donation if you are appreciating and enjoying these programs that we're putting on. You can find a virtual tour of our current exhibit, and you can sign up for a class that we're going to be holding later this month about string piecing. So lots to see and check out. If you know somebody who wasn't able to join us today, we will post the video on our website and you can watch that. And Nancy, you're welcome to share that with your friends and followers as well. So
thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much to everyone for joining us. Thank you again to Nancy for letting us take a little tour of Kalona. Oh, shoot, one more thing. Tell us about the outside quilt walk.
Oh, so, oh my goodness. It's probably been at least 10 years ago plus. Kelowna went under a revitalization, downtown revitalization, and that was, oh my goodness. I can't think of the Iowa thing that we got the grant from.
Great Places.
No, but Kelowna, known as the quilt capital of Iowa, I think started because of Marilyn Wooden, who started a quilt show here. And then when she had shops downtown, she always had a quilt exhibit. And so I think that that's kind of what started our name for that. And so when we did this downtown revitalization, they based it on quilts. And so we have 42 quilt blocks that are inlaid into the sidewalks as you're wandering the downtown area. We do have one that's in front of our building here, but we're a little bit off, a couple blocks off the beaten path of the downtown. So if you do come visit, we do have a brochure that'll show you where all those quilt blocks are. They'll give you the name of the quilt, a little history of it, and then basically local people and merchants sponsored each quilt block. So that's kind of fun. And if you go straight to the core of the downtown, there's one giant quilt block in the center of the street. And then even our water tower has a quilt block on it. But this year, our quilt show is going to be the last Thursday, Friday, Saturday of April. And it is their 50th anniversary, as is it is the Kelowna Fall Festival's 50th anniversary this year. So to me, COVID or not, there's a lot to celebrate, and hope a lot of people want to come visit Kelowna after Megan's given me the opportunity to show what we're all about.
Absolutely. All right, well, we better wrap up. We're pushing over 4 hours. You do it so fast, Nancy.
I told you I could talk.
You did a fantastic job. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who joined us. Have a lovely day, whether you're cold or warm. Stay safe and make something beautiful today, maybe. Have a great afternoon, everyone.